Good evening. Trigger warning for folks. This is a live tonight about who is convicted, who was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas. Sergeant Major Rivera, you're a disgusting human being. As advocates, those young people that you sexually assaulted, they will have to live with it for the rest of their lives. It would take years of therapy for them to get through their trauma. Not only them, but their family members also. And 32 years of service. And you have been doing this, conducting yourself like this for all these years. Troops go overseas, and the advocacy groups within the military who fight against sexual assault on foreign children. And it's unacceptable anyway. That type of conduct goes on all the time. And the greatest thing, besides you getting Leavenworth, is to see the disgusting disgrace. And you, as a sergeant major, are not a reflective member of our true service members. You do not protect our country, our American children, or the American Constitution, period. Anyone that can assault a child in the mannerism that you did, you're totally worthless. It's just a terrible situation. And your apology means nothing to any of your victims because they're just words. They just flow off your tongue. They're lies. And your example and your acceptance from the lower enlisted for doing the same kind of conduct that you perform on our military children, what kind of shit is that? You knew about the other enlisted soldiers doing this to other victims, and you collaborated with them. I thank God that you got 25 years in Leavenworth. I'm glad it wasn't a civilian court that allowed you not to be prosecuted in any state, because I know that you'll do a hard time in Leavenworth, and I know the rest of them are going to be convicted also. But I want to tell you something, Sergeant Major Rivera. You will never look in those victims' eyes again and see their pain, the dullness, the lifelessness that they have. I know that you got a big thrill by having control over their bodies, their livelihood. And that's what the problem is. The problem is there's too much trust with everyone. And even in the community of the military, we have to be on our P's and Q's. And that is what the shame is. The shame is you and your enlisted personnel are a bad example. And it's not just a rotten apple. You knew better. 32 years of service. And it came from the top all the way to the bottom. What kind of shit is that? What did you do? Why would you allow that to happen? There is no therapy for you. You're never going to get better. It was an accepted way of behavior for you. It's such a shame. It happens when our troops go overseas. These things happen in the field when they're in war and it's quieted. They come home and they do the same thing. It's not acceptable anywhere. Child abuse, sexual abuse, domestic abuse, it's not accepted. And a lot of our military personnel, especially when war is going on, they're right there on the middle of the list in a criminal matter. The judge will give them the option to join, and their record is expunged, and they join. And once their record is expunged in a civil court, when they go to the recruiter's office, the recruiter has no idea about civilian matters, whether they be they're misdemeanors. But when they join, the slate is clean, and they take the same problem into the military. That is what's sad. But when someone has served 32 years and they have been in war, Desert Storm, Rocky War, and all these things, and they go from overseas back home and they do the same thing over and over again. Can you imagine? 32 years, 60 kids a month. A year, 60 kids. That's a lot of kids. And if the truth be known, there were probably other criminal charges filed that's not discussable on social media platforms. But these victims, they range in various ages. You often have to wonder why this type of behavior is continuous. And a lot of people who do this type of behaviors, they get a slap on the wrist. Even with domestic violence, you see it every day. And if you work with it, it's really sad. It's a sad situation. But thankfully, this individual is going to Leavenworth. That is a military prison. And it's different than the regular jails or the prisons out here, or even a federal prison. So you'll hear a lot of people say federal prisons are nicer than state prisons. That is true because a lot of the state prisons are contracted out to CDA. And CDA, they're contracted guards and contracted educators, and they're not run by the same protocol that state guards are in any state. And there's a lot of trading back and forth for prisoners from one state to another. Let's say you are doing a crime in Virginia, at the governor's level and at the level of the prison system. A lot of prisoners are, I call it selling, but their contracts sold for the time that they have. Let's say they have 7 years for a very bad assault. Someone who's been convicted in Virginia can be sold to Texas, and the contract is just transferred only at the state level, not at the federal level. But it's just sad. The Navy, the Air Force, the Marine Corps, and when the victim's parents get out of the service and they lose their TRICARE benefits, and if you're an enlisted and you get out due to whatever, then you lose your benefits, you lose your insurance. And a lot of these kids, once they get out, they've been sexually assaulted while their parents have been serving in the military, and they don't have TRICARE anymore because they're not retired or they're not medically discharged with their retirement benefit from the VA, what happens to these kids if they don't qualify for Medicaid by any state? Then they lose the benefits for therapy. Um, it's really sad because they have no support systems unless if they're in a really good state that provides therapies by volunteer groups and by local mental health agencies that are nonprofit, that let's say a particular doctor may run, a psychiatrist or a psychologist. A lot of them run private nonprofit organizations for children, um, so that they can receive free therapy. But it's not a quick fix. There's not a lot of answers for this. It's just it's a continual pattern. And once a generation decides that there is not going to be any more abuse within a family, you have to start with one family at a time. And to change behaviors requires discipline, and you have to be committed to it. And it's a really sad thing. But Sergeant Major Rivera was not the only one convicted. There was a officer also convicted, um, but it wasn't at Fort Hood. It was at another place here in Texas. Um, you just need to watch your children very carefully. You need to keep your eyes out. And I was speaking with a young man the other day. His name is Brandon. And I asked him if he warned his child about sexual assault because she's already in school. And he said that's not necessary. And that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about sexual assaults with various people that we know. He said because she has a big mouth, and he said she talks a lot. She's very loud, outgoing. And as an educator and as an advocate, I think that discussion should be with every child. And once they understand autonomy of their own body, you should talk on their level. Because young children, that's when predators begin their grooming of young children. And when you're 4 or 5 years old and you have started school, and that grooming may have started when you're 2 or 3, children begin to question whether certain behaviors or actions are acceptable. And if their guardian does not talk to them about it, how do they become aware? And often they become aware because other children will talk to them in like a secretive gossip manner through their little ears, with their hand cupped over their ears. And, you know, they start in 1st through 3rd grade talking about it. And it may continue, the abuse may continue through 7th or 8th grade. And by that time, the kids, the victims, know it's not acceptable. But just think, if you don't have that talk with your kids, that's 5 or 6 years of abuse that happened. And you can't go back and undo that abuse for 5 or 6 years. You should already be on top of it as a guardian or a parent. But those are my thoughts about Sergeant Major Rivera today. I'm just happy that it wasn't a civilian court, because he would have got off a lot easier. You guys have a nice evening. Bye-bye.